Hello, interweb. It is I, Mr. Hosking, here to talk to you about industrialization. Specifically, today I'm going to be talking to you about the beginnings of industrialization. For an industrial revolution to begin, we're talking about the movement from an agrarian society, a farming society, into a manufacturing society or an urban society. So there has to be that move from agricultural-based society to manufacturing-based society, and that has to start with the agricultural-based society. We have a farming area in the world, and you create a lot of crops, and at first, everybody in the society has to farm to make enough food for themselves to survive. But then there has to be some sort of technological advance. There's going to be improvements in farming so that the yield or the amount of food produced by every individual increases. So now instead of everybody producing food for themselves, we're going to see each individual able to produce food for 10 people or 20 people or 30 people. And that means that all those other people not farming can now go and do something else. They can have some other type of job. There are three major inventions that we find in the 1700s that leads to massive increases in crop yields. The first one is invented by Jethro Tull. He was a scientific farmer, and he created the seed drill. It's a really simplistic invention. It's a giant wheel that has a bunch of spikes on it, and as the spike hits the ground, it creates a hole, and then a little drops a seed into that hole, and then there's a plow in the back that plows over it. And it sounds really silly, it sounds really simplistic, but the ability to just walk behind this machine and create rows of crops really quickly, really efficiently is way easier than having a stick and having to poke a hole with the stick and then drop a seed in and then covering it up with your foot. So it speeds up the time it takes to put seeds throughout your whole field, which means less people have to be doing that job. The second invention is a technique called crop rotation. Instead of using your entire farm to grow crops all the time, what this does is leaves one field in your farm empty, dormant. And that way you can rotate which fields you're growing on every year so that your fields have the ability to regain nutrients. Today our farmers don't need to do that because we have things like fertilizer that allows nutrients to go back into the soil, but back in the 1700s they haven't done that research yet. So now by leaving one field, they call it fallow, not being used, you're able to rotate which fields you use every year, and that keeps the nutrients there so that you can continue to grow a lot of crops. It increases the yield per field so one farmer can get more food. The third thing is selective breeding, and again this is simply just controlling how you breed your animals. You take your biggest cow, you take your biggest bull, you put them together, and you're going to have the biggest kids. Then those big kids are bred with big kids, and you get bigger kids. It's the idea of taking the best livestock and breeding those, and the worst livestock you kill off. It's frowned upon in humans, but with animals it creates bigger and stronger stock. This is going to lead to a lot of small farmers losing their job. You're no longer competitive with big farmers because now an individual farmer can get a lot more food out of a large farm than an individual farmer can do on a small farm. So these small farmers go out of business and they lose their job. They don't have a place to work in rural communities, so they have to move to these cities to find work. So now we see a population increase in the cities. Britain has an ideal situation for this to happen. They have pretty good lands. They have really good farms. They start to produce ample food or excess food with all of these new techniques, which leads to them having large populations of urban workers. So now all of these farmers are moving to city centers like Manchester, like London, and now they're looking for work. So there's people to work. They also have a lot of natural resources. They have a lot of canals and rivers that create water power. They have coal in the island of England that can be used to burn to create power. They have iron to create stronger machines. They have rivers that are there for transportation. They have harbors that they can ship their goods to other places. So all of the things that you really need to have a successful manufacturing country, England has. They have places to send the goods to other countries so that they can sell them. They have all the natural resources needed to make stuff. It's a perfect place, and they have all three factors of production. And we talked about these factors of production before: land, labor, and capital. Capital, easiest definition is money, but really it's anything that goes into the production of a good. So if you're talking about making a t-shirt, it's the cotton that you use to make the t-shirt. It's the needles that you're using to sew the cotton together. It's the machine that you're using to sew the cotton. It's the money that you're using to buy the labels to put onto the shirt. It's anything that goes into the building of your good. That's capital. Land is the area where you're building your factory, or that you have your factory to make the good. And labor is the people that are working those machines to make that good. Inventions spur technological advances. So there are key inventions that revolutionize industry that lead to the factory system. The textile industry is the first to benefit. They have things created like the power loom. They have things created like the spinning wheel allows people to make thread quicker, and then to bring that thread and make it together into cloth a lot quicker. And then they create things like the water wheel and the factory that now allow a bunch of these machines to work off of the same power source and run at the same time. And so we see enormous amounts of cotton being able to be produced at the same time. On top of this, expansions in transportation lead to benefits. Things like canal systems, so that you always have the ability to move stuff down canals from city to city, or from factory to market, or from mine. Like if you're talking about coal, from the coal mine down to the factories, you're able to move stuff along canals because boats move easier than carts. So canals are better. And eventually we have railroads created, and that's not road sand railroad at the end there. That's just me having a typo. It should have been roads and railroads. This is a mistake right here. And so railroads, now you're able to move massive amounts of weight very easily with the steam-powered railroad. That's all we've got for today. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll talk about the industrialization of cities.